This is the last part of this lesson, and we'll talk now about the main principles of the irrigation management in protected cultivation. Practically, the duty of the irrigation is to replace the amount of water transpired by a plant or evaporated. If the irrigation do not bring enough water to replace this amounts of water, then the soil or the substrate, the growing substrate, will become dry. And under these conditions, the plants will face some significant problems. The first will be a reduced number and length of the absorptive roots, which will affect the absorptive capacity of the root system and affect the entire plant growth rate. A second problem will be an increased electrical conductivity, and this is understandable because the reduced water content in the soil or substrate will naturally concentrate the salts of the which are contained in the water, and after that the plants will face a number of difficulties due to the higher electrical conductivity. We talked about this in previous slides. A significant problem of dry substrate will be the reduced calcium uptake by the plants, which have several consequences in the plant, and the most known of them is specific physiological disorders called the blossom end rot, which might cause significant losses of yield, and we talk about these specific physiological disorders in the next lessons when we talk about the production technologies of specific vegetable crops. And by appearance, the plants which have suffered a relatively long period of dry soil or substrate have reduced growth, they are thin, they have liquefied stems, and they are characterized by small and dark leaves. Of course, they have a higher content of dry matter, but overall their growth is much less than a normal plant, and overall the expected yield from plants grown under dried condition will be much smaller than a normal plant. Contrary to what we discussed until now, if the amount of water brought by irrigation or the frequency of irrigation is too high, we might be under the condition of the too wet soil or substrate. And because of that, the plants will suffer also several problems. Let's say from the beginning that under a very wet substrate or growth, the plants are forced to develop a very shallow root system, as you can see from the picture here, which make them later on very dependent on the crop management. The root system will not be capable to longer resist whether in a certain moment the supply of water will be shortened or ended up. And there are other problems regarding the wet environment and too wet substrate, and most of all there is a question of the reduced respiration rate. Normally it happens if the amount of the oxygen in the soil solution is less than 3 grams per liter, and because of this reduced respiration rate, first reduced growth rate of the root system will be appeared, but later on other even more serious problems will occur, starting with yellowing of the leaves, as you can see in here, and then the angle of the leaves is become wider, and later on wilting is developed, and finally the plants can even die if this situation of absence of oxygen into the soil due to the excess of water is relatively long. And unfortunately these are situations which are very frequent under common production practice, under common commercial production, and they happen for a number of reasons, starting with non-proper preparation of soil, and shallow plowing of the soil is a main reason of that. Then the excessive water doses and very frequent irrigation sequences, or higher amounts of irrigated water, even when the soil is mulching is used, and things in general which do not count either the right evapotranspiration needs of the plants, or do not consider the permeability of the soil to allow that the excess of water will be drained out from the root system. Of course, that under the condition of too wet soil or substrate in general, there will be a high risk of several plant diseases, and mostly of the diseases which are caused by microorganisms which lives in the soil, such as Fusariums, Verticilliums, and other similar fungus. The most used irrigation systems into the greenhouses are the micro irrigation systems, which have already replaced the previous older irrigation systems, such as furrow irrigation, already too old, and even the common sprinkler irrigation systems. There is a number of categories of the irrigation systems, micro irrigation systems, which differentiate from each other regarding the operation pressure and the flow rate. Normally they are plastic tubes laid down alongside the plant rows, and which have at a certain distances drippers or emitters with a specific discharge rate. which is from 0.5 liters per hour up to 30 liters per hour in the most abundant, let's say, micro irrigation systems. And meantime, the operating pressure overall it is very low compared to previous sprinkler irrigation systems, and it ranges from 0.5 to mostly 3 or 4 bars. Very really very low pressure, and which makes one of the advantages of the micro irrigation systems. Because of the low pressure, working pressure or operating pressure, they spend much less energy compared to the common irrigation systems. As you can see from the slide, the micro irrigation systems are divided into drip lines, drippers, emitters, capillary tubes, micro or mini sprinklers, and subsurface drip irrigation. Each of them has its own characteristics and might be used for different purposes. You should select your micro irrigation system in accordance with water requirements of your plants, availability into the market, and of course the market price. Each of them will be able to fulfill the needs of the crops grown under protected cultivation. There is a number of advantages which make the micro irrigation systems the most used ones under protected cultivation. It starts with a high level of the irrigation efficiency, and practically with the low risk of the runoff. Indeed, the micro irrigation system are using low amounts of water, and the discharge rate of water is of course very low, and because of that there is no soil erosion at all. The micro irrigation systems offer the opportunity to irrigate practically day and night. You can irrigate by this system even during the warmest hours of the day, which was not possible with the previous irrigation systems, and by that you provide to supply the plants with water at the moment they need it most, because in the warmest hours of the day the transpiration rate is very high, and by providing water directly into the plants in this period you significantly contribute to fulfill its immediate water requirements. By the micro irrigation systems, the development of the weeds is strictly reduced, and also there is a significant reduction of the pathogen attacks, because mostly the fungal diseases, because the air humidity under the micro irrigation systems remain very low. The contribution of the micro irrigation to increase the air absolute humidity is minimal. This is because it is not the whole surface of the greenhouse irrigated. There are only spots of wet soils, and therefore the evaporation rate will be significantly less compared to with furrow irrigation, for example, or even common sprinkler irrigation. And when it is followed, or when the micro irrigation system is followed with mulching of the soil, then the evaporation is from the soil is becoming almost non-significant. Another advantage of the micro irrigation system is that there is practically no soil compaction, and very important, the micro irrigation systems works under low operating pressures, which means that the consumption of energy is much less than under other irrigation systems, or especially compared to the sprinkler irrigation systems. And to the end, by the micro irrigation systems, we can also apply fertilizers and pesticides or other additives to the plants with practically no cost of delivery of them, and this also offer the opportunity to split the doses of the fertilizers in really small amounts, in daily amounts, and this is measure, or this is something which contributes to significantly increase the efficiency of the fertilizers, the efficiency of the nutrient supply to the crop, to the plant. However, the micro irrigation system have their own disadvantages. It's of course asked for some investments, some starting investments, and indeed the most frequent problem of the micro irrigation systems is the clogging of the nozzles. That is why it is essential to always include filters on the distribution lines of the irrigation systems. In addition to that, we should count that the micro irrigation systems needs a certain level of expertise on the proper management, not only to extend the life of the system in itself, not only for its proper maintenance, but also to be sure that we'll have a uniform distribution of the water to all the plants in the row, to all the plants in the greenhouse. Otherwise, it might cause unequal growth of the plant alongside the rows, and this will further affect the competition in between the plants and the final yield which will be received, which will be harvested from greenhouse.